Well, Val, Penny Van, Lauren, Rebecca, Crystal, Liana King, Rebecca, Scott M, Denise. Welcome, everybody. Nice to see everybody tuning in there. We got Curtis. What's going on, Amy C? Nice to see everybody. So, Justin, how are you tonight?
I'm doing all right, I guess.
Good.
It's been a rough week for me. I'm not going to lie. The weather in Florida has been absolutely insanely hot. We've had heat indexes up to over 107. So I have been secluding myself in the house with as much air conditioning as I can do.
Yeah, absolutely. Round of applause. So everybody going to the big old Bama conference tomorrow. Safe travels. Have fun. Say hello to everybody for me. Welcome, Jeff. Nice to see you. A round of applause to Jeff. So, hey, Justin, just got a topic for you. Mel's Hole. What the hell's Mel's Hole?
We can do Mel's Hole. You never heard of Mel's Hole? It is the hole to hell. Mel's Hole is definitely an interesting topic. It's got a lot of fascinating stuff. We can go over it. Absolutely.
There we go.
There's not a lot of research to do about it, but we can definitely tell the story. That'd be a fun one.
All right.
We will take note of that.
Awesome.
Yes.
So we do have an announcement to make. So
we do? What? Oh,
yeah.
So unfortunately, our guest that was going to be on tonight is in the emergency room this evening.
Yeah. Hello, Pamela.
We've been setting up this all week. We're very excited about it. She had a doctor's appointment today, and they found some stuff that they weren't very excited about. So they sent her to the ER to get admitted through the hospital. So unfortunately, we are not going to have our guest on tonight. But we're going to do kind of a part one, part two thing. So tonight we're going to lay the foundation to give us some background knowledge. And then hopefully next week or maybe the week after, we'll go through part two and she will be able to tell us her story. And it's actually her family story. Talking to her goes back to her grandmother. And
wow, that far.
That far. And basically a diary that her mom kept.
So what made her come forward about this story or her encounter?
Here's what's interesting is I've started working on my book, The Beast of Bloody Harlan, and doing some research on it. I remembered an old YouTube that I had watched several years ago, and I remembered the channel and who it was. So I pulled it up and I was listening to it, and a person was on there talking about Goatman stories. And then I realized that I knew exactly who that person was, and she was a friend of mine. So I actually reached out to her and I said, hey, listen, I want to talk to you about Goatman sightings in Kentucky for my book. And she's like, okay. She's like, well, I don't really talk a lot about it. She's like, but I've taken some reports. And I said, that's perfect. I just need some stories. So once we started talking a little more, come to find out that she had a family history with the Goatman stories as well. And so I was pretty excited about that. We talked about it. I told her to give me a basic rundown of some of the stuff that happened. And I got to tell you, it's pretty mind-blowing. And talking with her some more, I actually got permission from her. She's going to send me some copies or screenshots of the actual pages from the diary, or not even say diary, just a notebook of everything that was kind of going down. So I can go through it and analyze it and read it. And we're going to feature it in my book. So I'm pretty excited about that. But again, unfortunately, tonight it's not going to go, but we'll get a good background. I'll give you some of the stuff, and then we'll talk about Goatman, what it is, what it's not, and we'll get a good background for us. So when she does come on, we have a good understanding of what we're talking about.
Yeah, that's pretty interesting. Something that goes back kind of that far, right?
Yeah, and that's what really caught my attention. You can find one-off sightings. This person had this experience here. This one had one there. But and it goes with anything, where it's Bigfoot or Dogman or Goatman. Whenever you can have a familial history, then you can glean a lot more from it. I think you can learn more about habits, and we talked about the times a year where certain things would happen or wouldn't happen, and you can really get a lot more research out of it. So I'm pretty excited to move forward with this and research. We can hear her stories. We can put it in the book, and I'm pretty excited about it. But tonight we'll talk about Goatman in general.
Stone Hot, my friend Pan. Yeah, they got the statue in Louisville, downtown Louisville, down there by the park. We bring that up every time we talk about Goatman. And every time we talk about Goatman, I think about the bridge.
We're going to talk about that tonight.
And every time we talk about Goatman, I think about Squatch Man. So, yes.
Yeah, so it's going to be interesting. John Stewart, my father told me about it in Maryland. Maryland is what we're going to talk about. So tonight, what we're really going to look into is what Goatman is and kind of the regional thing, right? Because Goatman is very interesting because Goatman is definitely an urban legend topic, completely urban legend. And what we're going to talk about tonight is 3 major areas in the country, but it's really urban legend. And so for most cryptozoologists, most Fortean researchers, Goatman is not something that they're going to look into because it's an urban legend. But then when you encounter people that, again, are saying, hey, I've experienced this, you have to look at it. You have to look at it and understand maybe those urban legends came from something. There's some truth there. Like we always say, there's always a little bit of truth in mythology and legend. And so we're going to talk about that tonight. The legend of the Goatman. Part 1, because hopefully we'll get our guest on when she's feeling better and we can go into part 2 and actually talk about personal experiences. All right, so when you search the Goatman, you're going to find 3 basic areas. Maryland, which is the legendary creature from Prince George's County. Kentucky, also known as the Pope Lick Monster, legendary creature out of Louisville. And Texas, also known as the Lake Worth Monster, legendary creature out of Lake Worth. So these are going to be your 3 main story regions of where Goatman is going to be. Okay, so we're going to start with Maryland, the story of Maryland. And one thing I found really interesting is they all kind of start in the same time frame as well. Most of these stories are starting off in the 70s and 80s. And I found that absolutely fascinating as well. It's almost, again, like an urban legend where it kind of started and grew before the internet happened. We still had this phenomenon of these same stories popping up in different regions. So what I really found is where it really got a hold of Maryland is in 1971. University of Maryland student George Lizama completed an undergraduate folklore project on the Goatman, and it was later added to the archives. In the paper, it said that the Goatman was to be found on Tucker Road in Clinton, Maryland. You're going to find that a lot of the Goatman are specifically related to a road or a specific feature, a specific landmark. And I think that's different than most Dogman and different than most Bigfoot. And that's part of the idea behind an urban legend. It's going to be associated. You don't go down this road at night. You don't go here at night because something's going to happen. Later that same year, that'll be 1971, a reporter discovered the project in the archives and reported it in the newspaper in October, this time placing the Goatman near Fletchertown Road in Bowie, Maryland. And additionally, this report covered the theory that the Goatman's origins can be traced back to the Beltsville Agricultural Research Center. So we're literally seeing the start of the urban legend. A reporter found it. It doesn't say it, but it was October. October's Halloween. They created the story. They changed the location. And then they developed the whole government conspiracy behind the development, right? The Agricultural Research Center. And we're literally seeing the birth of this urban legend. Goatman stories originated in the early 1970s. Some of the legends are set in the 30s, specifically within Prince George's County. And what they did, there was some disappearances and deaths of dogs. and so they were attributed to this creature. However, given the condition of the remains, the deaths were more likely have been the result of passing trains. You can use your imagination as to what that means. Basically, the dogs were hit by trains. Despite evidence to the contrary, stories of Goatman's existence continued to circulate, especially among the local students, right? So here the legend is catching in with the students, is being passed around the schools, that this is the big thing out there. It's the new boogeyman. Graffiti reading Goatman was here was not uncommon. Law enforcement would habitually... Hold on, you turn that comment off for me. There we go. Habitually receive calls, reported sightings, albeit with a number being pranks. And then there's always going to be your variations. According to one variation, it was said the Goatman was said to have originally been a scientist who worked at the research center there. In that version, there was an experiment on goats. It backfires. The scientist mutates, and then it begins attacking cars. Another variation of the legend holds that the Goatman himself was an old hermit who lived in the woods, and people would see him walking along the road. And again, with urban legends, you're going to have whoever's telling the story is building it, putting in their own twist. It's one of the main identifiers with urban legends. Goatman was rumored to reside in a makeshift shelter in the wooded region of Prince George's County near the abandoned trailer parks. Occasionally, it was rumored that Goatman would venture out to kill any living thing. According to the folklorist Barry Pearson, the Goatman legend began long, long ago, and then it was further popularized in 1971 when the death of a dog was blamed on the Goatman. So this is one of those things where it was probably talked about, boogeyman style, and then this folklorist gets it, writes a paper out it, and now it becomes culture, and now it becomes the whole urban legend. So again, we're looking at that spark of truth. Is this something that people had been seeing, the old timers had been seeing, mentioned it in the family lore, but nobody really talked about it much? And then it became popular, and all of a sudden, here's this big urban legend with it. Barry Pearson relates that bored teenagers kept the Goatman legend alive by repeating the story and suggests the creature attacks couples frequenting lovers' lanes. Typical urban legend. So in Maryland, the creature is commonly claimed to have a human face, but with a body covered in hair. However, descriptions differed on whether Goatman greatly resembled a hairy humanoid or, like this, a human with the lower portion of a goat, similar to the fauns and satyrs of Greek mythology. Now, here I'm going to insert kind of a personal note. And I talked about this before on the show, but years ago, I was a graveyard overnight shift cook at Denny's in Florida down here. And we had a group of regulars that would come in. I'd go sit and talk to them when we were slow. And we found out that I was into this kind of stuff, and I was into the odd topics. And one of the girls that came in told me a story about how she used to live up in New Jersey. Now, she referred to this as a Jersey Devil story. She was out at a big bonfire party in the woods up in the Pine Barrens. She had to relieve herself. And so she walked a little distance into the woods. She was concealed but could still see the light of the fire and hear the people. And she was out there behind a bush, and she heard something moving. And so she was real still, just kind of thinking it was a person, didn't want to embarrass herself. And she was real quiet. And so she looked, and she saw something that she described exactly like this photograph. She described it as being a fawn with the lower half of the goat and the upper body like that and the horns. And she referred to it as the Jersey Devil. And she swore to me it was real. It was true. This is something that really happened. Nobody believed her. But that was her story. So exactly what this creature was over in Jersey, which isn't that far from Maryland. Susan F. said that is a picture of a centaur. I believe centaurs are the horses
Four
and
legs.
humans.
Right.
Yeah, with 4 legs. This would be a satyr or a faun, depending on Roman versus Greek mythology. This particular one here. But by very definition, it's a Goatman. So a lot of Maryland descriptions are going to be like this guy right here. And our guest is going to talk about seeing one that resembles this one right here as well. Val, but isn't the Jersey Devil supposed to have wings? Well, my personal belief is the Jersey Devil is a name given to all kinds of different creatures. When it's something you don't know what it is, they call it the Jersey Devil. But the traditional image of a Jersey Devil, yes, does have bat-like wings. You are correct on that. All right, so then we go to Kentucky, the Poplik monster. This is probably the most famous of the Goatman legends out there. It's also, in my opinion, the most urban legend one, and it's also the most dangerous one. And not just dangerous as far as the urban legend, but dangerous in reality. And we'll talk about why. The Poplik monster is a legendary part man, part goat, and part sheep creature reported to live beneath a specific railroad trestle bridge over Poplik Creek in the Fisherville neighborhood of Louisville, Kentucky in the United States. So this is one that's tied to a very specific location. Again, very popular with urban legends. There is a common misconception that the trestle is abandoned and no longer used. In reality, the bridge carries a major rail artery into Louisville. Heavy freight trains cross the bridge several times daily. So it's easy for someone to get caught atop of it while oncoming train barrels down on them. The railway has urged citizens not to climb on the trestle, saying if they are caught, they will be arrested. We're going to stress this because there's a lot of people that want to go check this place out. Don't do it. Don't do it. All right, so numerous urban legends exist about this creature's origins and the method it employs to claim its victims. According to some accounts, the creature uses either hypnosis or voice mimicry, like a voice you're familiar with. You might hear a loved one. You might hear somebody calling for help to lure passengers out onto the trestle to meet their death before an oncoming train. Other stories claim the monster jumps down from the trestle onto the roofs of the cars passing beneath it. Other legends hold that the monster is a human-goat hybrid, that it was a circus freak who vowed revenge for mistreatment. In one version, it is said the monster escaped a train that derailed, classic, circus train, and something escaped from it. Another version commonly told by the locals is that the monster is the twisted reincarnation form of a farmer who sacrificed goats in exchange for dark powers. So as you can see, like with urban legends, again, all different possible origins, different attributes, different things that it does. So clearly, the Poplik monster is an urban legend. Other legends tell that it attacks its victims with a blood-stained axe, and that the very sight of the creature is so unsettling that those who see it while walking across the trestle are driven to leap off. So there is an artist rendition of the Poplik monster. As we can see, it's holding his bloody axe. It's got larger horns. It looks more monsterish than a satyr. And this one is aggressive. This one is like your typical slasher, like your typical, hook man out at Lover's Lane. This is a guy who's out for bloodlust, and he's going to hurt you. He's going to do bad things. He's completely evil right off the bat. Now, you can find pictures of this bridge, and if I had had more time to throw this together, I would have put some up. But it's, like it says, trains run across it all the time. And I think this urban legend is really one of those warning types. Stay off this bridge, you're going to get hurt. This is not a place to play around. This is not a place for teenagers. And that's kind of the feeling I get from this one, you know. The legends have turned the area into a site for legend tripping, but there have been a number of deaths and accidents at the trestle since its construction, even though they have an 8-foot fence around it to keep people out. And here's some statistics. On April 23rd, 2016, a tourist from Ohio was hit by a train while searching for the monster. Her boyfriend survived by hanging off the side of the trestle while the train passed. 2019, a 15-year-old and was unfortunately hit by a train because they were on the track looking for the Pope Lake monster. She had a companion that was taken to University Hospital, but I couldn't find any status on her. So I really want to put it out there, guys. It's a cool place. It's a cool thing. Fun place to research, but don't go out there looking for it. Don't go to the trestle, walking down the trestle thinking you're safe, because you're not. There we go.
So,
thanks, Chris.
So the train trestle was built in the late 1800s. The park entrance rises 90 feet up in the air, and it spans 772 feet. So that's the area, and it's actually got its own little website, which I will drop it down in the comments for you. But just don't go there. I'll send a link over there for you so you can do, because it talks about the monster and everything there.
Mm-hmm.
So,
and I read on there that it can take upwards of 7 minutes for a train to completely go across that trestle. And then, so it's dangerous. And so I can't stress enough, you know, they talk about legend tripping. I enjoy doing that. I love going to places where things happen, but this is one of those. If you see it, don't go out onto the trestle. Enjoy the legend. Go out there, take a look at it, but just don't go out on the trestle. I can't stress that enough. I would feel horrible if somebody went out there from watching this podcast and something happened. So
yeah, once you're up there, only way down is jump or get hit.
That's it.
So
that's exactly it. So no bueno. All right, and then Texas, the Lake Worth monster. Now this one is interesting because to some people, the Lake Worth monster is a Bigfoot. The Bigfoot sightings. But originally the story was that it was a Goatman creature. And so you might hear the Lake Worth monster being a couple of different things. We're going to focus on the Goatman side of it because that's what we're talking about tonight. Now, this is in Texas. The Lake Worth monster is a legendary creature said to inhabit Lake Worth at the Fort Worth Nature Center and Refuge, just outside of Fort Worth. The creature is often described as part man, part goat, with scales and long clawed fingers. So this is the first time that they mention scales and the long clawed fingers. Again, reports started July of 1969, led to the belief that the mysterious creature lived there in Lake Worth. Newspapers reported the alleged sightings, including one in which the monster landed on a man's car after jumping out of a tree, very reminiscent of the Pope Lake monster, talking about jumping off the trestle and landing on a car. Another one in which it threw an automobile tire at a group of people. So apparently there was a random car tire and it got thrown at people. According to one reporter, the Goatman legend was spread via summer camp stories, where camp counselors told children to listen carefully and you'll hear his cry on the clear nights like tonight. So again, classic urban legend start off to it. But this is interesting. Newspapers also published a photograph purportedly taken of the creature by Alan Plaster, and locals began driving out to the lake at night to get a look at it. Local police investigated the claims but found no evidence of the monster in the Lake Worth and Greer Island area. So it kind of reminds me of the Mothman incident in West Virginia, where once the reports started happening, you had all these people going out to where this place was looking for this thing. And they got a photo of it. This is the supposed photo of the Lake Worth monster, the Goatman. Some people say this is the Lake Worth monster Bigfoot. It's the white Bigfoot. I see nothing that I would call anything in this picture. But if anybody watches the show, they know that I don't like pictures. I don't see pictures as well as people that can see 30 Bigfoot hiding in a picture. So this is what the picture is that they were talking about, reported in the newspaper. I can't see anything in there. Take it for what you will. The guy that took the photo, Alan Plaster, described it as a man-sized white fur ball. And he took that picture while driving past the Nature Center in 1969. But Plaster characterized the sighting as a prank, saying whatever it was, it wanted it to be seen. And since reports of the monster ceased when school resumed, many suspected the incidents were pranks carried out by high school students. In 2005, a reporter at the Fort Worth Star-Telegram received an anonymous letter from someone claiming to be one of 3 high school classmates who, in the summer of 1969, decided to go out to Lake Worth and scare people using a tinfoil mask. In 2009, Fort Worth, Texas magazine published a report about an unidentified man who said that he had been a perpetrator of the tire throwing incident. So people are coming forward saying, hey, this was us. Is there any proof that it was actually them? No. And that's one of the things I always tell people. Just because somebody claims they hoaxed it, doesn't mean they actually hoaxed it. They could just be looking for attention. So we have to look at that. But obviously, again, this is a specific location, specific behaviors, more than likely an urban legend. The reports all ceased after the summer. And then after that, it was kind of not there anymore. Is that it? And that was my last slide for it. So 3 major things from there. Goatman is definitely an echelon in urban myth, urban legend in our country. There's been movies made about it. Definitely the butt of a lot of jokes. It's a lot of fun. And so there's definitely folklore behind it. But again, we have real people coming forward, and they don't want to come forward because they know they're going to get laughed at. They know they're going to be made fun of because of it's an urban legend. But I believe that there is something to the phenomenon, because we get reports like the lady that's going to come and talk about her family's experiences. We get reports like the one I took from my friend that lives down here in Florida. Could they be made up? Could they be mistaken identity? There's always that possibility, right? But we have to give credence to people that are coming forward and saying, hey, this is something that's really happened. And there's different types of descriptions or different types of behaviors, and we hear them from different parts of the country.
So Greg Yost, Squatch Man, everybody knows him.
Absolutely. Great guy.
When we had that incident here in Louisville, Kentucky, where all those alpacas got attacked on that guy's property, that was covered up. Greg went to a neighbor's house in downtown Louisville, and the neighbor came out and was like, oh! And Greg was like, what are you talking about? He's like, the Goatman was here. And Greg was like, what? And Greg went down to the creek bed, and downtown Louisville, there is a slaughter farm for the pigs. And I worked off duty where Norfolk would have their trains and their equipment with tools, and they would hire off-duty police services to go down there at night on weekends in our cars and make sure that the homeless people wouldn't steal the tools. And you can hear the slaughterhouse 8 blocks away. Mm-hmm. Well, when Greg showed up, there were tracks in this creek bed. And Greg, shockingly, was in disbelief because they were like Bigfoot tracks. They were in front of each other, not side by side. So Greg followed these tracks, and they led to that train trestle, what I showed you guys. And let me mark this comment here, so where I left off. And these are what they look like. So, because I still have the pictures, because Greg called me the day after. And the only thing Greg had was dollars in his pocket to show reference. So these were perpendicular, see? And that's Greg's shoe size. And this is how it walked down through the creek bed. It was very fascinating how this creature walked. There's one that cast that was made. And Greg's hands, his hands is very huge. But look how deep that is, right? But when he made these casts, he took them to Fish and Wildlife in Kentucky and asked them what made these tracks. And they were like, where'd you get these? And he's like, I got them. And one of the agencies in Kentucky said that's moose tracks. And Greg's like, that's not moose tracks. He's like, come on. I know what moose tracks looks like. And they're like, well, we want to keep those. And Greg thought, actually, he made extras, and he thought they were going to get confiscated. So he made extras, right? And when he showed us the tracks on the show a couple of months ago, he's got them in a real nice aluminum box with a bunch of foam because some of them, the castings broke over the years from transporting. But when he took them to Indiana DNR, they were just beside themselves. They had no idea. Now, Greg actually went down there and talked to the owners of the alpacas that got slaughtered. And the guy actually saw Goatman face to face. And he lost it. And Greg told us the story and the account and everything. The police were beside themselves. The news. And it was interesting because after everything happened, they were like, nothing happened. But Greg saved everything on his YouTube channel. So if you go to the news channel's websites, there's nothing archived. Because you know you can go to the archive files and pull up news articles, right? Well, you can't now. They're gone. But Greg's got it, and he's got them archived. So it's funny because you go to research, you can't find anything. Because it was a big deal. It was a big scare. Because they said it was a pack of dogs. But they wouldn't say what type of dogs or anything. It was very, it was, and the chief of police, it was crazy. But it was very interesting. And what was wild, it was the type of axe that this Goatman said to have was the type of wound that these animals had. And it was that old battle axe. I mean, is that not creepy?
That's creepy. So Penny Van was asking about llama or alpaca tracks. That right there is the shape of llama and alpaca tracks. You see how round and curved that is? And they're not deep cutting like those tracks were. So there's definitely a difference there between an alpaca track.
But Greg actually has more pictures of how this thing walked. And what was neat about how Greg took the photographs, he got it from a long distance, and nothing on the sides of the creek was any tracks, human footprints, nothing. And Greg was like, this thing just walked through downtown Louisville like it owned the place. And people in the neighborhood heard this awful sound, like from hell. The gates of hell opened up that night. And they just didn't know what it was. And did you say the police were? Yeah, the police lied about it. It was a big cover up. Greg would tell you that because Greg was like, you're BS, you're lying, because I've got it in my YouTube channel. And it was interesting. They had the news helicopters fly over and everything. But Greg Yost, you can go out there on his YouTube, Squatch Man. I think he has everything archived still. But he was a big proponent of this. The guy that had his animals slaughtered actually had Greg to work on this. And it is crazy. It is crazy. Wow. So, but how do you fight something that's supernatural? And like Greg told you, by the power of God.
Yep. Here is an alpaca track in the mud. So you guys can see the difference. This is an actual alpaca track in the mud. You can see it doesn't have the deep cuts like the other one had. It's not, it's more splayed out. So definitely not the same trackway at all. And of course, as we know, alpacas are four-legged, and they're not going to have inline steps like that.
And I'll bring up the track again that's actually in the creek bed so you can see what it left.
Yep.
And I tell you, living in the country, Penny Van, I don't know an animal that leaves that. I'm sorry.
No.
And especially the cast that it left.
Mm-hmm.
And
if the sides are curving in instead of curving out.
Now, there are videos of sheep walking on hind legs for like 3 or 4 feet. That's creepy. But this, whatever creepy. This is, that creature, it walks through the whole creek all the way to the bridge on 2 legs, not on all 4s.
Not just on 2 legs, but it has to be structurally developed to walk in line step. Right? Which means it's very narrowed and it has to have a swivel hip. It doesn't have a basic hip like the 4-legged animal would. That's another important part. You have to look at the whole anatomy.
And then the actual cast is right there. And he actually showed a better one of the cast when he actually held it, and you can turn it around in his hand on the camera. So.
Mm-hmm.
But it was a really good show, and a lot of people were like, "Man, that's just too creepy." So,
well, it is, and you know what the problem is people will dismiss reports like that simply because it's too creepy. It doesn't make sense. We don't like it. We don't believe it. You know what I mean? And it's like, no, you can't do that.
Yeah, the casts were huge. I don't remember how long they were because Greg's hands are huge. Greg's a big country boy.
He's a big dude.
Yeah, I mean, he is. He's big. And when he showed him on the show, remember, if y'all watched it, we asked him to get the cast out, and he did. But he showed them and turned them from the camera. But I forgot what he called. Animal Control was involved. All the news stations covered, the media covered. They had all the news stations flying around the guy's property downtown. So, but it was pretty wild. A lot of people were scared. So, but it's interesting.
Penny Van asked for a llama track. It's hard to see, but it's very, very similar in shape. The biggest thing to notice is they're rounded. You see how they're rounded like that on the outside, and nothing protrudes back. Where the other ones that we were showing, they have the back end on it, and they go concave on the side. So there's a definite difference.
And the tracks that Greg got will support weight bipedally.
Yeah,
the llamas, the other ones, does not. So that's what makes it unique, right?
Dave, Campbell County, Tennessee has old railroad tussle that has stories of Goatman, even the battle axe. Similar description to the Poplick monster. I wonder if the train tracks connect. Very possible. But again, you know, looking at urban legend, you're going to see the exact same things like that. You know what I mean? So when doing research like this, we have to separate out what's going on. You know what I mean? But yeah, I mean, that story is going to be around all over the place.
I have to ask Greg, there were some kind of special alpacas or something, because they were like watchdogs that were killed. So special breed of something.
Generally, the way it works, and I had a friend up north that raised alpacas. He had a huge herd. And what they would do for because alpacas are small, soft, cute, cuddly, adorable little fuzzballs. They would get guard llamas to guard the livestock, because llamas are aggressive, especially a male, and they will guard the pack of alfalacas. Did I say alfalacas? Alpacas. And he had a big one, because up north we had bears, we had coyotes, and we had the occasional mountain lion. And so he had a guard llama to guard his flock of alpacas. And they will fight off bear, they will fight off mountain lion, they will fight off predators. So if something is able to take down, a full-size male llama, that's an impressive critter.
Yeah, there was a bunch of them. I think there was like 18 or something killed. It was quite a few.
That's a massacre.
So, because it happened on 2 different occasions, I think. 2 different houses, I think.
And it's interesting, because some of the other stories I've heard of Goatman creatures, they really have a penchant for hogs and livestock, like hogs and goats. And for some reason, they like to go after livestock. And I don't know if it's just easy food source. I don't know what it is, but hogs seem to be a favorite for Bigfoot and Dogman and Goatman. So they're out there. It's interesting. Those are the threads that we look at. Some of the commonalities. Penny Van, alpacas are jerks too. Cousins raised llamas and alpacas and elk in Wisconsin. Yeah, there you go. They're out there. Tammy said it's worth going back and rewatching that show with Squatch Man.
Oh yeah, I mean, I love Greg to death, right? I mean, we're supposed to be hooking up this month or early next month, because I know he's filming right now, or with a ghost crew right now. But he's going to take on Goatman himself. He's waiting to go battling. He did. He challenged him. And I'm like, damn, Greg. I mean, he's just that type. You don't want to mess with Greg. Mm-hmm. I'm a little bit slower. I don't put him up, duke him up. I just pull out a bang, bang, pew, pew, when you're done. But anyways.
Susan F. was wondering, were the animals eaten at all?
I don't know. Only thing I know is Greg said it was horrible sight, and like he said, the wounds that was there, and it was from that battle axe, and it was just horrible. The guy that saw Goatman, I don't know if he ever recovered. To be truthful, you have to ask Greg, because Greg's is still in one contact with the owner. Yeah, I know he had a mental breakdown, evidently or allegedly. I would too, seeing something like that.
Well, yeah, something like that completely shifts your reality. It's a whole different paradigm, and you're not like wired to accept that unless you're weird like we are. You know what I mean? Yeah. Hopefully we can get into this next week. Hopefully my guests will be recovered by then. If not, I have another great guest lined up anyway. And so we can have some good conversations about some more stuff going on. Again, a lot of this I'm pulling related to writing the book. And so as I'm researching Appalachian creatures and coming across, I'm going to be pulling that stuff out so we can kind of discuss and look at and have some fun with it. So we'll have some good guests the next couple of weeks to talk about some good cryptid stuff and just some good paranormal cryptid, all kinds of weird stuff. So we're going to have a good time. It's not going to be just listen to me talk.
Awesome. So ladies and gentlemen, if you got an encounter or a story that you want to be aired on the show, email us, send us a message at bigfootgrizz@gmail.com, or get a hold of Justin or myself. And from coast to coast around the world, Godspeed, everybody. We'll see you tomorrow. Bye-bye.
Have a good night.
YouTube channel near you.